Hey everyone, welcome. David in History for the Ages here. So this should be a fun topic, the fake army that helped win World War II. And yes, you are looking at inflatable tanks here. So before I get into this story, I'd really love to know what is your kind of favorite World War II story, or maybe something you want to learn about. Leave it in the comments. Maybe I already have a video on it. If not, might give me some ideas for some other cool videos people want to watch. I have a whole playlist on World War II. My most popular lecture on that is the one on D-Day, which happens to be a pretty long lecture, but people really enjoy it. I don't cover this, even though this is part of the D-Day story, actually, as you're going to see, this fake army. But so I thought I'd add this to kind of my series of lectures on World War II. So what is this? Well, this is what we call the Ghost Army, right? Great name for it. That's kind of the unofficial name. Officially, they are the 23rd Headquarters Special Troops. And what they were a group of about 1,100 soldiers, so not a huge number, right? When you consider, how many hundreds of thousands of men and vehicles and, millions of men really are going to end up being involved in the D-Day invasion. 1,100 men is kind of small, right? And so they were designed to appear like they were a 30,000 man division, right? So you have 1,100 people, they have to make themselves look like they're 30,000. And the way they did this is by going to strategic places and bringing these, like you can see here, they're lifting up this inflatable tank, but it wasn't just tanks, it was trucks, it was jeeps, it was planes, it was artillery pieces. Anything that if you're flying overhead and you're looking down below in some spy reconnaissance mission, it's going to look like real troops to you and real soldiers and real weapons and real everything. And they didn't just have the images, they also had sounds, right? One of the cool things, so some people have heard of the Ghost Army, and I'm hoping maybe even you've heard of this. There's some new stuff here you haven't heard of before. But they even recorded sounds, right? And they had sounds like troop movements and artillery firing. And what they would do is they would use these loudspeakers and they would put this out. So if you're like, Germans far away or in a nearby area, you hear this and it sounds like, hey, there's, I could see them from the air, I could hear things. There's really a big force there. They even went as far as sending fake radio transmissions. So this was an incredibly complex operation. So that's what the Ghost Army was. Now, where was it used? And so I'm going to give you a few examples of places it was actually used in World War II, starting with probably the most significant and most famous, June 1944. Now, of course, June 6, 1944, you see on the map here, you got Normandy and the D-Day invasion. Again, I have a whole lecture on that. And so what we have here happening during this time is the Allies created a completely fake army group north, right, at Pas de Calais. And it's just kind of north area. You can see it on the map there. And it was led by Patton. Now, that wasn't an accident. Why General Patton? Well, if you know anything about World War II, General Patton was, of course, this amazing military general. Amazing individual in terms of success in military. And many people thought if anyone's going to lead the D-Day invasion, it would be Patton. And so it was a really good idea to use him as kind of a decoy. And this worked really well. It wasn't just setting up this, ghost army up there with all the things that I mentioned earlier, but they had this double agents, like this guy named Garbo, and he sent like all these false information to the Germans saying that there's going to be a attack up further north, as you can see here on the map. And even as D-Day was happening and the troops were coming in, Hitler refused to move a lot of his troops. He's like, no, the invasion's coming up in the north and all of that. And it really did help the invasion take place. Another kind of little side note about this, when you watch my D-Day lecture, I talk about the paratroopers. And when the paratroopers landed, the U.S. paratroopers often landed in misaligned places. They didn't land where they were supposed to. And that kind of, on one hand, it was like not good because troops were supposed to land in certain drop zones. But because so many of our paratroopers missed the drop zones, that also further confused the Germans. And so all of this was very important in terms of allowing the war and the battle or the D-Day invasion to succeed. So that's probably one of the most famous times it was used. There were other operations as well after D-Day. We used the Ghost Army as well. You can see at this other location at Brest. which was like August, September of 1944. Basically, this is a place where there was a need. You can see it's kind of boxed there in the red, that I boxed there in the red, and the little X there you see on the map that I put, that would be like roughly the Normandy invasion. And so the Operation Fortitude was further north, and this is taking place further south. Specifically, it was a deep water port, which of course is going to be important to be able to land ships to after D-Day, to keep landing your men and supplies and so forth, to keep the attack going on the Germans. And so what the Ghost Army did is basically create a fake division right outside the city. And the Germans thought that there was this big, huge force there, and it helped them surrender earlier. Now, this is interesting because it reminds me. So the first, attempt, the first Ghost Army thing was to basically divert, to get the Germans to go somewhere else. This was used to get them to think, wow, there's such a big army, we're not even going to put up a fight. And this is something that Genghis Khan did. And one thing I hadn't researched on this, and it'd be fun to do, did the people who planned the Ghost Army, did they study Genghis Khan? Because one of the things Genghis Khan did for the Mongols is he created these little fires. He had like one man start a whole like 5 fires, and his enemies would think, oh wow, there's a whole bunch of troops there, and he didn't have quite as many men, and he used that to his advantage as well. So that's another really kind of cool story. There were other events, along the Rhine River, that we had, where there were troops movements, and they were kind of, it allowed the, decoy basically. So one way you could use it was for forcing the German troops, to a different part of the area. Another way was to get them to surrender. Another was like a decoy. You trick the Germans to think an attack is coming from one part, and then you circle around the other way, right? So all of these things ended up being pretty effective, and it's pretty cool little stories. So there's a lot more, of course, to this. I'll drop a couple links, or maybe I'll try to find a link or so to put in the description to give you a little bit more detail on this if you want to learn more. But that's the little ghost story, the Ghost Army of World War II, the fake army that helped win the war. So I hope you enjoyed that. Please, again, leave comments, like, share with friends, subscribe, all that good stuff, and keep watching all my other stuff. All right, everybody, happy learning. Hope you enjoyed that.